am Ruth Emerson, 62 years old, the woman who taught her son to tie his shoelaces, and then had to learn how to tie her wallet shut. The day Caleb texted, "Mom, I'm stuck. $600. I sent it right away. Out of love, out of trust. By evening, the cashier bowed her head and whispered, "Your wallet is feeding an entire family." I forced a smile, but my heart fell like a coin slipping from the palm of my hand. I know my pain isn't unusual. Love, given a price tag, sacrifice relabeled as duty. I'm telling this story not to cast blame, but to clear a path of quiet justice, of decent boundaries. If you've ever been used by your own kin, I want you to have a map, one that leads you out of the dark while keeping your heart bright. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, share this story, and don't forget to leave a comment wherever you're listening. You think I'd make a scene? No. I chose to watch in silence because bills don't lie. I only meant to gather a few receipts, and instead I stumbled on a note in the iPad laying out a loan plan in plain detail and a voice recording cold as steel. It's just business. In that moment, I stopped transferring money. I started balancing the books of justice. Now, back to where the story begins. Aisle 9 at the Maple Ridge supermarket. Chalk white neon, the scent of freshly opened toilet paper, and a whisper sharp enough to tear open the cozy theater of family obligation. I drew a breath and slipped my notebook into my coat pocket. If they're using my son's name, then tonight I'll let the money speak. That night, a cashier bowed her head and whispered, "Your son is supporting an entire family with your wallet." I laughed it off, then hid behind the toilet paper shelf. My name is Ruth Emerson, 62, living in Maple Ridge, Ohio. I'm not wealthy, just a pension as thin as the sticky note on the fridge. But I felt I was doing fine until Caleb's texts started coming in a single mold. Rent, a broken car, insurance. The first time I sent $600 straight away, like handing someone a raincoat when gray clouds roll in. The second time I told him, "Just come here to eat and save money. I'll cook." He said it was fine, just a small snag, then sent me a bank number. I often laugh at myself for hands that move faster than my eyes. Protecting your child isn't wrong, but protecting, and protecting without looking back, turns into willful blindness. Then, tonight, the girl at Register 4 glanced around and drew me close. "I've seen them a few times," she whispered, her breath catching on a mint. A middle-aged man and a young woman, swiping a card for luxury items. When they sign for exchanges, they mention the name Caleb. They say he'll take care of the bill. I heard my heart knock against my ribs like knocking on an empty house. I asked her name. She said Beth. She apologized for intruding on private matters, but she'd seen Caleb Emerson on a few receipts, familiar because I sometimes pay by card at her register. I stood behind the toilet paper shelf because I didn't want anyone to see my face when my small world gave a quiet crack. The smell of freshly opened pulp stung my nose. The neon lights laid bare every drifting speck of dust. I told myself it was a mistake, maybe just the same name. But Beth offered a few more crumbs. The man liked calling staff by their first names, as if everyone were his grandkid. The woman flashed a quick, snapshot smile as she swiped the card, then slipped a box of wine into a reusable bag. And when asked to confirm, they dropped my son's name the way you drop a scarf over the back of a chair. I knew who they were before she finished describing them. Martin Doyle, Tessa's father. Tessa is Caleb's wife. Good at thank yous, better at reasons. I didn't hate them, at least not before tonight. I was just tired. I went home, opened the tea cupboard, and poured hot water into an old porcelain mug. Everything so ordinary, it's easy to forget. Ordinary can be a disguise. I set my blue-covered notebook on the table, squared it with the pen. I flipped back through the recent pages. Dates, times, reasons, amounts. I used to think I was careful. Turns out I'd been a dutiful bookkeeper for a script I didn't write. I touched the pen tip to the blank space and stopped. The phone chimed. Caleb texted a short line. "How are you, Mom? I wrote back that I was fine and asked if the car was fixed. He said it was done. Thanks, Mom." When a child writes like that, what mother wants to believe the worst? I thought of calling Caleb right then, ask straight, turn the cards face up. But some voice in me said, "Don't. When you can't see, you tend to talk louder to calm yourself." I didn't want to talk loud anymore. I wanted to see. Night fell. Maple Ridge was as hollow as a stage after the curtain drops. I went back to the supermarket with light steps, like someone practicing meditation, by counting the beats of the streetlights. Beth saw me and nodded. I nodded back. No smile. I'm no detective. I'm a mother. And mothers have another advantage: patience. I chose to stand by the household aisle, watching through the gap between two rows, ears pricking at every beep of the scanner. A young couple passed, arms full of potatoes, irrelevant. A middle-aged man asked an employee about towel prices, also irrelevant. I held my breath, like keeping a thread steady at the eye of a needle, waiting for something to drop. I thought about the times Tessa put an arm around my shoulders and said she didn't want to be a burden. I used to believe words like that, the way I believed the evening weather report. Now they sound like a lullaby meant to keep you asleep. The wall clock ticked past 9. I was about to give up when Beth stepped away from the register, pretending to arrange gum, and signaled toward the door. I looked. The automatic doors opened like a mouth inhaling the night air. I didn't see Martin or Tessa that night. I saw a different shift worker pushing a cart with a sign printed clear as day. Returns, pending confirmation. On top was a clear envelope clipped around a receipt with a name faintly printed, the one I know too well. I took 2 steps, then stopped. No need to give anyone reason to say I was nosy. But curiosity isn't a sin if it leads you out of the dark. I stood still, counted heartbeats, and listened to the air conditioner hum like wind through thin leaves. I didn't need to scream. I needed a scrap of paper, or a signature, or a reason not to lie to myself. I knew that if they'd used my son's name, a single receipt would be enough to make the truth bob up to the surface. I clenched the blue notebook in my hand like the hand of an old friend. The neon was still cold, but I could see more clearly than before. I'd made my choice. Observe first, speak later, say little, and let the receipts talk. If they've used my son's name, tonight I will see a receipt that speaks. The next morning, my kitchen was as quiet as a small library. The kettle murmured, and the smell of cheap coffee rose like a tired breath. I reopened my phone and scrolled far back. Caleb's first message surfaced like a red pen mark. "Mom, I'm short on rent this month." I remember not hesitating. I tapped to send $600, like pulling a blanket over a child on a cold night. That day I told myself just once. But the next month, once again and again. The reasons changed like the weather. The car broke down. Insurance went up. The landlord threatened a fee. And my hand grew accustomed to the transfer button, like a reflex. I don't blame my son. There are seasons when people swim in shallow water and still drown. But by the 5th message, I knew I needed a different kind of line, a line to pull myself up before the ink ran dry. I pulled from the drawer a blue-covered notebook, already faded. Its frayed corner felt like my own spine after years of bending for family. I drew 3 columns: date, reason, amount. The pen scraped the paper, dry as autumn leaves. Each morning I brewed the same cheap, slightly sour coffee. I set the cup beside the notebook and wrote in short lines, avoiding any pitying adjectives. The 12th, rent. The 26th, car died. The 3rd, insurance. I wouldn't let myself judge before I'd seen enough. But I also wouldn't let myself cross the street with my eyes closed. That afternoon I watered the rosemary pots on the front porch. My neighbor, Mr. Green, bent to trim his tomatoes, the green smell of leaves on his hands. He looked over, smiled kindly, and said the Doyle place had been lively lately. Delivery trucks stopping more often, brands I'd only ever seen in magazines. He said Tessa signed, sometimes with Martin beside her, hands in his pockets. Once, when the delivery guy asked for a signature, they smiled, like they were taking wedding photos. I nodded and said nothing. In my head I heard my pen tapping the table's edge in place of an answer. That evening I sat again with the blue notebook. I added a new row, note from Mr. Green, high-end goods, signatures. I know taking other people's word isn't a good way to live, but sometimes all you have is a scrap of fence-side talk. Beth lit up in my memory like supermarket neon. Her sentence hung between two aisles, heavier than a bag of detergent. I laid my hand on the notebook. It seemed to warm, as if it had a pulse. A notebook is the decent thing that stays when promises thin out. I started writing down the small things, call times, tones of voice, the little pause after each please. I logged the times Caleb stopped by, slipping off his shoes at the door, the smell of machine oil on his jacket. He finished a reheated bowl of stew, thanked me, and left. He told me Tessa was taking extra shifts, that Martin had just paid something costly. I nodded, but my eyes stayed on the page. I chose silence, but I watched. Because speaking too soon only makes people raise their defenses higher. Silence isn't endurance. Silence is so you can hear the needle touch the cloth. The next day, Mr. Green reached over the wooden fence again. He pointed at a new SUV, rims so shiny they reflected my maple tree. I gave a dry laugh and said maybe they'd traded in the old car. He said maybe, then winked, the way old folks do when they don't want to stir things up. That night I boiled another kettle. The cheap coffee smelled the same, but my heart thickened like syrup. I looked at the figures in the notebook the way you look at seeds you shouldn't have sown. Each transfer a seed, habit the rain, and the weeds spreading thick. I thought about the church meetings where they talk about boundaries. I'd nod along like someone who'd memorized the lesson, without ever living it. A car braked out in the lane and I startled. Headlights swept across the curtains, leaving a thin band of light. I turned off the kitchen light, went out to the porch, and leaned on the wooden rail. The wind shifted, the smell of damp earth drifted to my feet. In my head, every fragment braided into a line that pulled me up, out of a chair more comfortable than it needed to be. I grabbed the blue notebook and slid it into my coat pocket. I wanted to step outside, even if only to walk the block once. A passerby went by, hugging a big cardboard box with an unfamiliar logo. I understood. This small town knows everything about each other, except what we don't want to know. I went back to the kitchen, flipped on the light, opened the drawer for my reading glasses. A new page in the notebook opened like a small window. In the margin I wrote a simple line, "Trust isn't a blank check, and kindness needs a fence." I watched the wall clock, the minute hand touched 12. The night was round as a lid, and I heard something shift inside it. I didn't want to believe Beth was jumping to conclusions. People can be wrong, especially when they stand all day under cold lights. But the next morning, when I walked past the store's receiving area, I saw a parcel on the returns counter, the corner of a plastic sleeve flashing a familiar name. I moved back half a step, my heart tapping my ribs like a little hammer. A clerk was sticking on labels. The faint smell of packing tape hung in the air. I read the ruled lines on the box, elegant italics, a brand I'd never bought. I thought of the electric bill I'd paid last week and felt a cold sweat at my nape. Maybe Beth had exaggerated, until I saw a shoebox priced the same as this month's electric bill. At noon, sunlight poured through the supermarket windows, turning the floor into a checkerboard. I stood by the returns counter, pretending to browse peppermint gum, eyes flicking to the plastic sleeve clipped to a receipt. The first sheet sat cocked on the tray's edge, the ink still fresh. I lifted my phone, tapped once, no flash, just enough for the letters to come clear. The total smacked my eyes like a slap, 389.47, wine and seafood. I swallowed hard. Receipts don't lie, only people do, or choose not to read. An employee pushed over another stack of returns. On top lay a thicker receipt, 2 pages stapled. I tilted the phone and snapped fast. Total, quotient 19, a combo that sounded like a weekend jaunt, spa and sneakers. I left the supermarket like someone who'd picked up an old mirror. Looking into it isn't always pretty, but at least it's true. In the afternoon, I stopped by the church during office hours to find Tammy. She's the parish accountant, her voice small and straight as a ledger's margin. I set the blue notebook on the desk and opened to a fresh page. 2 photos of receipts lay beside my entries like pictures of 2 hands stamped with ink. I asked Tammy to reconcile them. I read her the dates Tessa texted Caleb to borrow money. Her fingers tapped the spreadsheet, quick and steady. Tammy's keystrokes were just like the tick of my wall clock, unhurried, unpitying. The results appeared like pre-printed ruling. The day Tessa asked for rent matched exactly the day 389.47 appeared. The day of the car trouble lined up with 612.19. Tammy looked up and asked if I was sure I wanted to keep going. I said I did, because sometimes stopping in the middle of a bridge is scarier than crossing it. She suggested I look at Caleb's credit report as well. I texted him, "Mom wants to check if any charges were misapplied. I understand the numbers better than you." Caleb replied briefly, sent the verification code the way he's trusted me to sort papers since high school. I downloaded the report and printed it on the church copier, the paper still warm. The list of accounts ran down the page like a row of trees. Near the bottom, a new sprout, a store card, opened 4 months ago. The card's name was the same brand I'd seen in elegant italics on the plastic sleeve that morning. The billing address wasn't Caleb's apartment. It sat on the street where the Doyles string autumn lights along the porch. I leaned back against the wall and let the paper rasp my palm. If they're poor, they feign it well, while the new card still smells like plastic. The distance between hardship and performing hardship is sometimes just 1 line of address. Tammy paused a beat and said the data doesn't show mercy. She printed another copy and clipped it to the 2 receipts I'd photographed. 3 sheets became a rope, pulled taut from the plea for money to the checkout counter. On the way home, I stopped at the post office and bought a thick envelope. I wasn't mailing it anywhere. I just wanted everything to sit still in one place, the receipts, the report, and the notebook page in my hand. That evening, I brewed a pot of tea. Tea's scent fools no one, unlike the vanilla candles at the Doyles. I set the paperwork on the table and skimmed it like a shopkeeper doing the last count of the day. My phone buzzed. A text from Tessa, words sweet as syrup. "Are you free tomorrow night? Come over for dinner. I'm making Caleb's favorite." I stared at the screen the way you look at an invitation. I answered that it's been a while since we sat down together. Tomorrow night works. My hand touched the edge of the blue notebook. It was cool, like a stone laid on a fevered brow. On a new page I wrote, 2 receipts, 1 card, 1 invitation. Night fell. Maple Ridge grew so quiet I could hear the refrigerator breathe. I leaned back and thought about the line I've always believed. Everyone deserves trust, until they prove otherwise. Maybe it needs a second half, and sometimes the proof arrives as numbers. I stood, slid the papers into my bag, and tried to picture tomorrow's dinner. Scented candles, a tablecloth flat as a freshly signed check. Polite greetings, smiles placed just so. I wasn't bringing accusations. I was bringing questions and papers cold as glass. And I was bringing new eyes, no longer blind to the glossy streaks. I turned off the living room light and left only the kitchen lamp. Its small gold glow was like a pin holding the page in place. I set the bag by the door and touched the handle the way you touch a modest promise. Tomorrow night they've invited me to dinner. I'll bring the notebook and the new eyes. I arrived at the Doyles 5 minutes early. The door opened. Vanilla-scented candles flowed down the hallway. On the dining table, a white cloth, crystal glasses spaced with ad-perfect precision. The wine had already been left to breathe, the light washing the bottle's face red, like someone who'd been laughing too long. Tessa came out, a simple but deft dress, a smile practiced in the mirror. "Mom, think of this as a reintroduction," she said, pressing the word reintroduction. I counted in my head. Reintroduction means changing the costume on an old play. Martin appeared behind her, hands still in his pockets, eyes sweeping over me as quickly as an inspection. He praised the weather, the maple leaves, even my shoes. I didn't contradict him. I sat, set my bag by my feet, and listened to the candles crackle like very small raindrops. The starter was pumpkin soup, cinnamon ground so fragrant you almost wanted to believe there wasn't a bad smell left in the world. Tessa poured the wine, praised Caleb's work ethic, said that sometimes men who are very capable get stressed more easily. I nodded lightly and set down my spoon. I looked around, napkins folded like little boats, knives and forks shining like mirrors. I circled the point. Has the rent situation been more manageable lately? Tessa answered immediately. Yes, thanks to you, Mom. That thanks to you brushed past her lips, like a candy shard, melting fast, leaving sticky residue. I smiled, kept my tone even. And the car last time, is that settled? All set, Martin cut in. The shop keeps its prices reasonable. I caught another scent threading in. Not vanilla, perhaps the smell of overconfidence. From the kitchen came the oven's chime. Tessa excused herself to bring out the main course. I stood up by instinct. I'll help slice the bread. Their kitchen was bright as a showroom. Pale stone counters, a wooden board, a bottle of olive oil, an iPad beside a basket of lemons, its screen faintly lit, as if a hand had just touched it. I set the loaf on the board and my eyes slid over the screen. The Notes app was open. The first line stood out clean, as if written for a stranger to read. Plan? Ask Caleb 600. Reason? Rent. Repay in A. I didn't breathe for a few seconds. Below were a few faint bullet points, apparently another amount next week, another reason. I didn't need to read it all to grasp the rule of the game. The game didn't orbit around hardship. It orbited around a script. I put the knife down and wiped my hands on the dish towel. My phone was in the pocket of my coat by the back door. I walked over, opened the pocket, took it out. Back at the counter, I tilted the iPad slightly and took a clear enough photo to forestall argument. I sent the image to my email with a one-word subject. Notes. The kitchen stayed warm and fragrant, as if it had never held anything cold. Tessa reappeared, arms full of roast chicken. She thanked me for slicing the bread, then asked if I'd like more wine. I nodded. My voice sounded strangely normal. We returned to the table. More wine. Martin talked about a few recent deals of his. No deep detail, just enough to signal that he was busy and successful. Tessa asked me about parish activities, the book club, the violets on my porch. I answered just enough, turning the conversation like turning a page I'd already read. I looked at my hands on the edge of the tablecloth. They were the same hands that had sent money more than a few times, but tonight they were steadier. Tessa ladled more soup for me, told me not to be shy. I said I'm not shy. I'm just counting, but counting with my eyes. Caleb wasn't there. He texted that he'd be late because of overtime. It made the dinner feel like a rehearsal. The lead absent, only the director and the co-star on stage. I ate small, listened much, kept my face like someone listening to instrumental music. Mid-meal, I dropped a line as light as air. Lots of delivery trucks in my neighborhood lately. Tessa smiled. Holiday season. Everyone's shopping. Martin added, buy wherever it's advantageous. He shrugged, as if everything were merely arithmetic. The table fell silent for 5 seconds, long enough for a mask to press on tighter or slip a little. I didn't peel it off. I let it choose. By dessert, the candles had shortened. The wine loosened the talk. Martin raised his glass, eyes looking past me as if through a pane. In a family, money is only a tool, he said, voice even as a dictionary line. I held my silence for a beat. In my head, a question stood upright like a nail. A tool for what, Mr. Doyle? I set down my spoon and smiled. On my phone, in my inbox, the screenshot lay still like a stone beneath water. The clearer the water, the clearer the stone. I poured a little water and heard it thread the inside of the glass. The candle fluttered, then steadied. Dinner went on as if nothing had happened. But I knew this dinner had been renamed, no longer a reintroduction. It was opening night. Martin touched his glass to mine. Ding. I answered, still smiling. But inside I already held the cord to draw the curtain, and when the curtain rises, the person in the light won't be me. A tool for what, Mr. Doyle? We'll find out soon. We left the Doyles with vanilla still clinging to our coats. Maple Ridge's streets were slick with mist, the streetlights drawing long yellow threads across the pavement. Caleb drove slowly. The radio muttered traffic updates no one really heard. I unlocked my phone and turned it so he could see the first photo. Receipt 389.47, wine and seafood. Caleb glanced over, hands still firm on the wheel. Then the second one. 612.19, spa and sneakers. I offered no explanation. The paper spoke. Caleb exhaled lightly, like a car door that didn't quite shut. Mom, marriage needs trust. I nodded, as if agreeing with half the sentence. Trust isn't the same as blindness. You're paying for empty boxes, Caleb. We stopped at a 3-way, the red light hanging like a period. I pulled up the iPad note screenshot. Plan. Ask Caleb 600. Reason. Rent. Repay, nay. Caleb read slowly, lips pressed tight. The words weren't loud, but loud enough for a son to hear what he didn't want to hear. Tell me what you think I should do, Mom. His voice got smaller, like a shirt that shrank in the sun. I put my phone away and looked straight ahead. You stop transfers for 30 days. No promises, no advances. Just observation. Caleb nodded. His eyes left the wheel for half a second, then returned. I'll tell Tessa I want this clear. I didn't hug him or pat his shoulder. Sometimes touching too soon makes people fall. We pulled into the driveway. Caleb carried my bag inside and stood awkwardly at the kitchen door. Get some rest, Mom. I'm going to talk to her now. He left a scent of garage soap and the soft scratch of shoes on the wooden porch. I brewed a pot of tea and sat with the blue notebook. I wrote, dinner at the Doyles, 2 receipts, 1 iPad note, proposed 30-day pause. I didn't expect everything to change color overnight. Habit clings like old glue, hard to peel without tearing the paper. Around 9, my phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. I told her Tessa says she understands. Another line. Her car died on the way home. I just sent 400. I read it 3 times to be sure I wasn't mistaken. $400 slid across the screen like a leaf slipping from a branch, touching down without a sound. You just said 30 days, Caleb. I typed, then erased, then didn't send. My message would only raise the fence of defense higher. Instead, I opened the notebook and added a line. 9:12 p.m. 400. Reason car broke down. I set down the pen and heard the refrigerator's steady breath. In my head, Martin's words echoed, money is a tool. A tool for what, if not to press on the softest blind spots? I chose not to argue. Arguing now would be like slapping water. Still water, only more ripples. I chose to gather more evidence. Evidence doesn't gossip and it doesn't persuade. It just stands there, waiting to be seen. Near midnight, wind slipped through the door seam. I brewed more tea and logged the call times, the silences after each ask. I thought of Caleb as a boy, laces tied crooked. Back then, I knelt to retie them, taught him to make a knot. Tonight, I needed to teach another knot, a boundary knot. My phone lit up. Not Caleb. Tammy. Are you still awake? I have something. I called back. The sound of keys on her end pattered like a light rain. Tammy spoke slowly, each word placed as if on a scale. Ruth, there's an automatic backup from their iPad to a shared email Caleb used back when he helped with paperwork. Do you want to hear this? I leaned back in the chair, my hand still on the notebook cover. The kitchen dimmed a little. The yellow lamp trembled, like someone keeping a secret drawing a deep breath. I didn't say yes right away. I pictured the knot forming, the line running from receipts to notes, and now, a voice behind a smile. Tammy paused a beat, then added, "Voice memo, it has a date, a speaker's name, not long but very clear." I closed my eyes and heard the wall clock's hands meet at 12. We want to trust but not be blind. I taught my son that tonight. Now it's my turn to listen, and look, enough. I opened my eyes and lifted the phone to my ear. Go ahead, Tammy, send me the file. On the other end, a soft click like a door unlatching. And here, in my small Maple Ridge kitchen, I drew the blue notebook closer to my heart, ready to write a new line in ink darker than usual. Tammy inhaled. Ruth, the file's on its way. Are you ready? I looked at the kitchen light, a patient gold dot in the night. Ready. Because some nights justice doesn't knock, it calls. And then the phone buzzed again. A file appeared, a small waveform icon like another whisper. Tammy said, "Do you want to listen?" I sat in the dark kitchen, my hand resting on the blue-covered notebook. The phone screen lit a thin strip, its waveform icon blinking like the heart of someone keeping a secret. Caleb came in carrying the smells of night wind and machine oil. He pulled out a chair, didn't ask anything, just gave me a small nod. I opened the file. The clink of dishes, then Tessa's voice, bright and light, like a scented candle. Start the week with rent, end the week borrowing for a pet emergency. Break it into smaller sums, his mother will suspect less. I felt something in my chest give way, like an old chair that has just lost a leg. Caleb still didn't blink. Martin's voice followed, dry as printed paper. Put it on the budget sheet. Label it family support. That way, it's clean. In someone else's kitchen, a refrigerator hummed in the background. In mine, it hummed too, the two sounds layering like the two sides of a bill. Tessa gave a small laugh at the end of her sentence, a note meant to cover things. Just text your mom on discount days, fewer questions. Caleb closed his eyes. I saw his finger rub the edge of the table, as if searching for a familiar nick. I didn't say, "I told you so." I laid my hand on his, heavy enough to say I'm here, light enough not to push him over. The file ended with a spoon tapping the rim of a pot. Silence poured into our kitchen. It wasn't the silence of anger. It was the silence of someone who has just found the right name for their own ambiguity. Do you want to hear it again? I asked. Caleb shook his head. No need. I heard it clearly. We didn't discuss it long. Some things get thinner the more you talk. Caleb picked up his phone and said just 3 words. I'm coming now. Maple Ridge darkened, tire treads bit into the damp road like tearing paper. The Doyle's door opened, cold white light spilled across the porch. Tessa stood in the doorway, Martin behind her, like 2 people waiting for a delivery. Caleb didn't circle around. He set his phone on the table and hit play. Tessa's and Martin's voices rang through the gleaming living room, slipped through the seams of the throw pillows, and crawled up over the coffee table glass. Tessa changed color fast. She put a hand over her mouth. Tears reached her lashes, then fell on cue. I I was just afraid your mother would think badly of me. We just need to get through this phase. Caleb stood straight, eyes fixed on some point on the wall. He didn't ask why. There was no room left for questions. Martin folded his arms, his face unchanged. Don't be dramatic, he said. It's just business. The words hit the tile like an old coin and popped once. I looked into his eyes and saw spreadsheets, not a person. Business, I repeated, my voice strangely even. Then who's the customer? What's the merchandise? And who's paying the shipping? Tessa turned to me, tears clinging to her lashes like salt. I don't want to be a burden. She said it like reciting a slogan taped to a fridge. You've done it very systematically, I said. I pointed to the phone, budget sheet, notes, and now a voice. Martin shrugged. In a family, money is a tool. People who know how to use it live easier. Caleb swallowed. A tool for what? If it turns my mother into an ATM. His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm as a nail. Tessa hiccuped, still without an apology. She said she would pay it back, then retracted it with another line. When things are better. Martin didn't speak of paying back. He only said, clean up the paperwork. Don't leave a trail. I realized that in this room, every apology had been replaced by terminology. There was no wrong and right, only reasonable and advantageous. I slowly took my eyes off them and looked at Caleb. Whatever you decide, I'm beside you. Caleb let out one long breath like pulling a pin. If this is business, then as of now, the contract is over. He stopped the recording, pocketed the phone, and headed for the door. No one stopped him. On the porch, the air was colder than when we arrived. Caleb braced a hand on the railing. His shoulders dropped a short inch. I thought trust meant doing as asked. Turns out trust also needs knowing when to stop. I nodded and opened the car door. Tomorrow we're seeing attorney Dana Park, I said. Tessa stood in the doorway, eyes wet, still without an apology. Martin drew the curtains like dropping the curtain on a roll. Inside me, a very small click sounded. The curtain had been drawn. On the drive back, Maple Ridge was as quiet as a waiting room after hours. I set the blue notebook on my lap and pictured the line I would write. Voice memo, tool, no apology. The red light at the corner flipped to green. I looked at Caleb gripping the wheel, steady. Tomorrow, I repeated, like setting an appointment with the truth. And in the back seat, the empty space felt like a witness, ready to sign the first record of quiet justice. Dana Park's office was as simple as an old classroom. A wooden desk, a pale gold lamp, the warm smell of freshly printed paper. She set a clipped packet of papers in front of me and said, "We'll go piece by piece, slow and sure." On top sat the bank statements, then the credit report, the iPad note screenshots, and finally the audio file. Dana didn't exclaim, didn't nod. She took up a pen and drew a straight line down the page, splitting the truth into 2 columns, words and numbers. "Walk me through the timeline," Dana said. I opened the blue-covered notebook and read line by line, dates, reasons, amounts. At the edge of the desk, Caleb sat still, his hands laced as if holding a bird that had just slipped free of its cage. Dana slid the statements down and pointed to the transfers. 9 months, total comes to 14,780, includes bank transfers, cash, and 2 payments made on their behalf. Her pen made another decisive stroke. At the same time, a new store card was opened, billing sent to the Doyle's address. Caleb shifted as if a chair creaked inside his chest. "I didn't sign to open any card," he said. Dana nodded. "Current evidence shows the signature isn't yours. We'll send a letter demanding the account be closed and the unauthorized charges removed." She matched Tessa's ask text dates to the invoices for wine, spa services, sneakers, thin threads forming a road. And here Dana opened the audio file and set a small speaker on the desk. Tessa's and Martin's voices filled the room, so clear the air turned cold. "Start the week with rent. End the week with a pet emergency. Break it into small amounts. His mother suspects less. Put it on the budget sheet. Label it family support. Dinah didn't comment. She paused the file, typed a brief statement of facts, and clipped it to the iPad note screenshots. "Now my part," she said. The demand letter was drafted in 12 minutes. No big rhetoric, just timeline, figures, and a due date. At the end, she added a paragraph, a warning about financial deceit within the family, and the option to pursue the matter in court if payment was late. Caleb signed the authorization to handle the card. His hand trembled once, then steadied. "We have personal work to do as well," Dana said, looking from me to Caleb. "Boundaries. No private meetings, no long explanatory texts. Everything by letter. If needed, request a no-contact order." That afternoon, we left the office to the rustle of paper I call the breath of truth. Maple Ridge sat quiet as a freshly closed book. I saw Caleb's shoulders lower, not from relief, but from knowing the weight had finally been set in the right place. 3 days later, mediation took place in a small room at the county courthouse. Tessa sat across from us, fists on a tissue. Martin came along, silent as a calculating shadow. Their attorney didn't contest the voices on the recording. He used the in-between words, misunderstanding, rough patch, good faith. Dinah didn't lift an eyebrow. She slid the stack across. Statements, note photos, credit report, and a transcript of the audio. The result came faster than I expected because numbers travel straighter than feelings. Caleb filed for divorce. The agreement: Tessa would repay a portion on a set schedule. The store card would be closed and the unauthorized balance removed. No direct contact between the parties. As for the Doyles, no more back and forth, no more helping out. From now on, everything lives on paper. Martin spoke exactly once, when signing the acknowledgement of the demand letter. "It's just business," he murmured. I answered no louder than dry leaves, and now it's settlement. Outside the courthouse, Caleb stood under the maples, looking up at a sky cut into squares by power lines. "I thought justice had to be loud," he said. "Justice has many voices," I told him. Today it spoke softly. We walked to the little diner at the end of the block. Caleb ordered chicken soup and ate it spoon by spoon, like relearning how to feed his own body. I didn't lecture or wrap a lesson in a frame. We just sat together and let silence do its work. That night, back home, I opened the blue notebook. A neat new line, 14,780 over 9 months. Store card closed. Demand letter sent. Divorce filed. No contact. I set down the pen and poured tea. Its calm scent belonged to someone who doesn't say much. I called it quiet justice. It needs no applause, no bright backdrop. It arrives in straight lines of text, in dates, in signatures. It puts each person where they belong. Those who owe, pay. Those who erred, make amends. Those who should leave, leave. In the next room, Caleb lay on his back with his eyes open. Not from insomnia, but because for the first time he was seeing life without someone else's glass over it. I closed his door very gently so the darkness could rest. Out on the porch, wind touched the violet I'd planted. The leaves quivered like a nod. I knew the road wasn't over. The hard part isn't closing cards. The hard part is reopening trust without making it blind. I sat down and asked the night wind the way you ask yourself. 2 years from now, will my son still believe in love? 2 years is enough for a bed of violets to take root. Every morning I water them. The warm smell of soil unlocks memory, like the tin box where I keep a few old receipts. I watch the water seep in and think of the days I mistook silence for weakness. Turns out silence has teeth. It just bites in the right place. Caleb is different now. He lives in a small apartment, makes coffee in the morning, walks the lake at night. His phone no longer lights up with headings that say help needed. He learned to set boundaries like learning a new knot, firm, without choking himself. When someone tells a story about needing money fast, he answers with one clean line. Let me check the paperwork first. It isn't coldness, it's kindness that knows how to stand upright. As for me, I opened the Quiet Ledger Fund. The name is small as a sparrow, but enough to fly. There isn't much money, part from my pension, part from friends, and part from Caleb with this note, from others who had to reconcile bank statements alone. My fund does 3 small things: prints how-to guides, books taxis to get elders to court on time, and pays for a one-time consult so they know they have the right to ask hard questions. The pages I print don't shout. They carry one line: receipts don't lie, but you have to dare to look. We helped the elderly woman on Pine Street take back her ATM card from a grandson who liked to borrow and forget. A retired carpenter learned to lock down his banking app after being coaxed to install a discount app. A widow in the next parish learned to keep a steady ledger so that when someone asks, "Are you sure?" she can set the notebook down and say, "As sure as a nail set into a beam." I led a short talk at the library, no longer than a kettle of tea. I didn't replay the old recording. I read a transcribed passage with names and details stripped. Someone asked if hearing it made me hate. I said I don't hate, I remember. Remembering so I don't repeat, and so I can walk a little way behind someone who needs it. Once in a while a message from Tessa pops up, a holiday wish, a photo of flowers. I reply with a polite thank you and set the phone down. I keep the court's rule: no private chats, no long explanations. I keep my own rule: a heart is not a revolving door. If you want in, the key must be new. Martin slipped from view like a boat choosing another shore. I didn't follow, and I don't wish him back. I just log the repayments arriving on schedule, like a diligent clock. One afternoon, Caleb knocked with a manila envelope. Inside was a draft prenuptial agreement he's preparing with his new girlfriend, Lila. He asked me to read it, smiling like someone who's finished a hard assignment, not for lack of trust, but to trust the right way. I read slowly, handed it back, and said, "You don't need me to wish you luck. You need me to wish you clarity." We hugged, briefly, hold too long, and you start to think the work is done. The violets on the porch drooped their petals like a nod. I snapped a photo and sent it to Beth, the cashier from back then. She sent a smiley sticker, then added a line I read twice. "Ma'am, this week an elderly lady got tricked by her son-in-law. Do you have a ride free?" I sat up straight and heard the wind touch the chimes. I opened the cabinet, took out the stapled packets, checked my marker and the blue notebook. I texted back, "I do, and this time we bring receipts." Not to corner anyone, but to open a door so they can walk out. In the evening I watered the flowers. The water hit the soil soft as a calm greeting. I remembered the nights I wrote down numbers, hands shaking with fear, and wrote anyway. Now my hands are steady. Not because I'm stronger than anyone, but because I've learned to let words stand before feelings. I went inside, packed the papers into a canvas tote, and locked the door. On the table, the Quiet Ledger Fund tin sat still, its lid lightly scuffed. Inside are small amounts, but each one is a nod from someone who used to be afraid. Tomorrow, I'll use a portion to call a taxi for the elderly woman and print 10 more packets. You ask if there is justice. Yes, but it doesn't perform in a grand hall. It walks in small steps, with receipts to guide it and a blue notebook as witness. It comes slowly, but it comes. And the next story will likely begin on another porch, with another mother, hands trembling a little, eyes brighter than the night before. If it were you, would you stay silent or confront? Comment below, and remember to follow to hear how I help that elderly woman turn the silent ledger of her life back to a clean page. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.